Hearing that voice, I was taken aback. I looked around, but the TV wasn't on, and there were no electronic devices playing audio. Was it my imagination?
John, what are you thinking about? Hurry up and let me hold the baby.
My son Tommy was already 3 months old. Ever since he was born, he had been the apple of everyone's eye, and I couldn't bear to be away from him for even a moment. But the company was urging me to return to work. I was reluctant to leave my infant son, and at that moment, my mother-in-law offered to help us take care of the baby so that my wife and I could go to work. Looking at Helen's kind face, I was convinced that it was just an illusion. Just as I was about to hand Tommy over to her, that tender voice sounded again.
Daddy, don't give me to her. She will sell me to people who trade organs.
I quickly held Tommy back, looking at Helen with some suspicion. This time I heard it clearly. It seemed to be my son's inner voice. Although I hadn't figured out the whole situation, I couldn't let Tommy be at any risk.
John, what do you mean by this? I'm kindly offering to help you with the baby, and now you're acting like this?
Old woman, you have no good intentions. You want to sell me so that your grandson outside can have a place.
I forced myself to stay calm and said in a flat tone,
Mom, I've thought it over. Tommy is still young, and since Sophia has to go to work, I'll stay home to take care of him. I'll talk to the company about it.
Helen's face froze for a moment, then she forced a smile.
Oh, come on, you can't neglect your job. I'll take good care of my grandson, you just focus on your work.
Mom, I appreciate your offer, but I still want to spend more time with Tommy.
With that, I ignored Helen's displeased expression and took my son back to the room. After locking the door, I immediately placed Tommy in his crib and asked softly,
Tommy, was that you talking to Daddy just now?
Tommy only responded with baby babble, his little hands and feet waving happily. I waited patiently but didn't hear that child's voice again. Sitting by the crib, I tried to clear my mind and began to think about the series of events. The child's voice, which seemed to be Tommy's inner voice, mentioned that Helen wanted to sell him to traffickers to make room for her grandson outside. Helen only had one daughter, my wife. If there really was a grandson, did that mean my wife had a child before marrying me? I met Sophia during our school days. Initially, I had no romantic feelings for her, and I gently rejected her multiple confessions.
Sophia, I'm flattered, but I don't feel the same way.
However, she didn't give up and pursued me persistently for 2 years. Eventually, I was moved by her determination and decided to date her. A year after graduating from college, I proposed to her and we got married.
Sophia, will you marry me?
Yes, of course.
I thought it was the beginning of our happy life together. However, after marriage, she wasn't as passionate as before. I always hoped to have a child, but she said her career was on the rise and getting pregnant would affect her future.
I can't risk my career right now. Let's wait a bit longer.
As a result, we rarely had intimate moments, and when we did, we took precautions. But about 1.5 years ago, one night, we both got drunk and neglected to take precautions.
Sophia, do you think we should?
Let's just enjoy the moment.
Due to my busy work schedule, I forgot to remind Emily to take emergency measures, and she ended up pregnant. I was thrilled, but Emily seemed worried.
We're having a baby! Sophia!
Yes, it's just a lot to take in.
After I bought many baby supplies and clothes, she gradually began to look forward to the little life growing inside her. The thought of Sophia's sweet demeanor when we first met made me feel nauseous. If I let my guard down and allowed Helen to take my son while I was at work, she would surely concoct some lies, leaving me heartbroken. Then, Sophia would bring her lover's son home and find some excuse for me to adopt him. Knowing my soft-hearted nature, if I lost my son and was devastated, Sophia could easily persuade me to accept the boy by describing his tragic circumstances.
No wonder! For the past 5 years, Sophia had been saying she didn't want children because she had already given birth. She even lied to me about the scar on her stomach, claiming it was from a stomach polyp surgery. I felt sorry for her, thinking she had a stomach ailment at such a young age.
No wonder. When she first got pregnant, she didn't let me accompany her to the prenatal checkups, and I thought it was just her independence. Her change in attitude later made me believe she had finally accepted the child, but it turned out she was conspiring with Helen to sell the baby.
Tommy is her flesh and blood too. How could she be so heartless?
Sophia returned to the room, still speaking sweetly, but she no longer held Tommy. I sneered inwardly.
That was fine. Tommy didn't want her near him anyway.
Honey, Mom just told me you don't plan to go back to work. Why the sudden change? Didn't you already make arrangements with your company?
I just think Tommy is still too young. Before we got married, I promised to support your career. Now that you're going to work, I'll stay home with him. If necessary, I can be a stay-at-home dad.
My family is well off, with 2 rental properties and several storefronts. After graduating from college, I could have stayed home and managed the rentals, but Sophia always said she liked ambitious men, so I worked with her. But now, protecting my son is the top priority. I won't give them any opportunity.
How can that be?
Realizing her overreaction, she quickly softened her tone.
You know my salary isn't great. If only I work, how can we ensure Tommy's future?
So what? My parents have long wanted me to manage the rentals.
Sophia tried to persuade me further, but I feigned impatience.
Enough. Even if I don't work, we won't end up on the streets. I just want to stay with Tommy. Don't bring this up again. Besides, Mom is getting old. I can't trust her to watch the child. What if she takes him out and he accidentally gets lost?
I saw a flicker of guilt cross Sophia's face.
What are you talking about? That's impossible.
I was just saying. Let's drop it.
Hearing this, Sophia reluctantly fell silent. She slept soundly with her back to me, but I was restless, unable to sleep. This home had changed since I could hear Tommy's thoughts. Refusing to let Helen take care of Tommy had planted seeds of suspicion in their minds, possibly pushing them to desperate measures.
I decided to take Tommy to his grandmother's house first thing in the morning. As I was thinking, I heard cautious footsteps at the door. My heart tightened, and I quickly pretended to be asleep, one hand gripping my phone and the other holding my son tightly.
The bedroom door creaked open, and the footsteps approached. Someone was standing by the bed. Feeling a hand reaching for my son, I suddenly opened my eyes and threw my phone at the person's head. A cry of pain broke the night's silence. It was Helen's voice. She was trying to take my son while I slept.
Who's there?
Sophia was startled awake by the sudden noise and quickly turned on the light, only to see Margaret clutching her head and lying on the floor. She hurriedly got out of bed to help Margaret up.
Mary. What happened to you?
It hurts so much.
John's phone had a hard case, and with the force of his punch, it was no wonder she was in pain. Once she had recovered a bit, she glared at John with wide eyes and angrily pointed at him.
John, are you trying to abuse your mother-in-law? How could you be so cruel?
Sophia also looked at John with disapproval. John defended himself innocently.
I was half asleep and thought someone was trying to take the baby. Mary, what were you doing in our room in the middle of the night?
A flicker of guilt crossed Margaret's face, but she quickly regained her composure.
I couldn't sleep and wanted to check on my grandson. Is that wrong?
You didn't have to be so sneaky about it. I'll be up soon to make Tommy's formula. You could have come then.
Margaret was at a loss for words. Seeing this, Sophia quickly intervened to smooth things over.
All right, Mary didn't mean anything by it. It's all a misunderstanding. Mary, let me help you back to your room.
With that, Sophia helped Margaret back to her room. John carefully approached Margaret's room and eavesdropped on their conversation.
Mary, why are you in such a hurry?
Because he won't give me the child. If we don't sell his son, how will we support Hui Hui? Hui Hui is already 6 and about to start school. Didn't we agree that he should go to a prestigious school? What if his education is delayed?
But you can't just steal the child from home. If the child disappears, even John will notice.
Then why not get rid of both him and his son? That would solve everything.
Mary! Are you crazy? If John disappears without a trace, his parents won't let it go. We agreed to bring Hui Hui back first to enjoy life. As for his parents, I'm still young and can outlast them. We can deal with John later.
Sigh.
You can't act rashly anymore, understand? Discuss any plans with me first.
Understood.
Before Sophia came out, John quickly returned to his room. Hearing their conversation, he broke out in a cold sweat. He had been skeptical before, but now he chose to believe his son's inner voice.
Sophia and Margaret, could there be anyone more malicious than you two?
Over the years, their facade had been flawless. John remembered when he was sick in college, Sophia crossed half the city in the middle of the night to find an open pharmacy and brought him medicine, taking care of him all night. After they got married, if he casually mentioned a dish he wanted to eat, it would appear on the table the next day. There were countless such instances.
It was Sophia's thoughtfulness and gentleness that made me never suspect her all these years. But when they talked about getting rid of me, they were so resolute, as if we had some irreconcilable enmity. Have I not contributed enough to this family?
Initially, his parents didn't approve of his marriage to Sophia, but he pleaded with them until they finally agreed. When they got married, he gave her a dowry of $50,000, and the house and car were all provided by his family. After marriage, Sophia's monthly salary was only $3,000, not even enough for her own expenses. The household expenses were all borne by John alone. But he never complained about her. She said she wanted to be an independent woman and didn't want to quit her job to be a housewife, and he supported her. She said she was afraid of losing her figure and didn't want to breastfeed, so he got up at night to make formula for the baby.
I supported everything she wanted. I even helped take care of her mother when she was busy with work. But how did they repay me? They wanted to sell my son to fund her illegitimate son's education at a prestigious school, wanted to outlast my parents, and then get rid of me.
Fine, let's see who falls first in the end.
The next morning, Sophia went to work, and Margaret was still asleep, probably disturbed by John's actions the previous night. John quickly took his son and left, heading back to his parents' house, a place he hadn't visited in a while. Even though Sophia's words last night suggested they wouldn't take any immediate action, John couldn't risk it. He didn't want to live under the same roof with them anymore, just seeing them made him feel sick. John's parents were overjoyed to see him with the baby. Mary took Tommy in her arms, and he immediately started giggling. Robert, usually stern, also smiled warmly at the sight of his adorable grandson. Seeing their graying hair made John's heart ache.
Dad, Mom, I'm sorry.
Son, what's wrong? Why are you apologizing out of the blue?
Did you get into trouble, or did something happen at home?
Dad, I didn't get into trouble. I just regret not listening to your advice. I shouldn't have married Sophia.
What happened?
John thought for a moment. The idea of hearing his son's thoughts was too bizarre. His parents would think he was crazy. So, he left that part out and only mentioned that he suspected Sophia of infidelity. Mary was furious and immediately demanded that John divorce Sophia. In contrast, Robert was more rational.
But the house and car are marital property, and there's the $50,000 in dowry. According to the law, the dowry doesn't have to be returned in a divorce.
Robert had a point. Although their family's financial situation could handle the loss, John couldn't swallow his anger. His first step in revenge was to make sure Sophia left with nothing.
Then we should first find concrete evidence of Sophia's infidelity before talking about divorce.
Gathering evidence isn't difficult, but divorce alone isn't enough. She not only cheated but also conspired with her mother to sell our son. If it weren't for my parents, they might have already tried to get rid of me. Dad, can you help me find a private investigator? I need to uncover everything about Sophia's lover.
No problem.
Soon after, Margaret called.
John, where did you go?
My parents said they missed Tommy, so I came back to spend some time with them. I'll return in a few days.
Oh, why didn't you bring Sophia with you?
She's busy with work, so I didn't.
All right, then. Take good care of your parents.
Margaret quickly hung up. To them, John was still the submissive John who would tolerate their deceit and betrayal. Returning to his parents' house was just a routine matter, and they expected him to come back and serve them soon. Meanwhile, they were probably planning. John sneered and opened the surveillance cameras installed at home. These cameras were set up after Tommy was born, initially intended to monitor him in case of emergencies. But since John had always been with him, they had never been used. Unexpectedly, they proved useful in this situation. Helen's face froze for a moment, then she forced a smile.
Oh, come on, you can't neglect your job. I'll take good care of my grandson, you just focus on your work.
Mom, I appreciate your offer, but I still want to spend more time with Tommy.
Ignoring Helen's displeased expression, John took his son back to the room. After locking the door, he immediately placed Tommy in his crib and asked softly,
Tommy, was that you talking to Daddy just now?
Tommy only responded with baby babble, his little hands and feet waving happily. John waited patiently but didn't hear that child's voice again. Sitting by the crib, he tried to clear his mind and began to think about the series of events.
The child's voice, which seemed to be Tommy's inner voice, mentioned that Helen wanted to send him away to make room for her grandson outside. Helen only had one daughter, my wife. If there really was a grandson, did that mean my wife had a child before marrying me?
Sophia had recently met a new man. This man was handsome, tall, and most importantly, he came from a wealthy family, owning a large enterprise. He showed an unusual amount of enthusiasm towards Sophia.
He's so different, so charming. And his family is incredibly wealthy.
She quickly forgot about me and James. She didn't even consider why such a wealthy and charming man would fall for her so quickly. Perhaps my devotion to her had made her overly confident in her own allure. This wealthy man even took Sophia to meet his parents.
His parents told me that as their only son, any girl he chose would be cherished by them. Given their age, they would hand over the family business to the couple as soon as we got married.
Sophia was overjoyed. At this time, I had returned, having lived comfortably with my parents for 2 months. They didn't seem to care, including the fact that I didn't bring my son back with me. They showed no reaction.
John, I've got something for you.
After I returned, Sophia arrogantly handed me a divorce agreement.
What do you mean? You want a divorce?
That's right. John, I've been tired of you for years. Just sign the papers so we can part ways peacefully.
I cursed myself inwardly for being blind before. But outwardly, I still pretended to be heartbroken.
Sophia, why? We've lived together for so long, always harmoniously. And now we have Tommy. What will happen to him if we divorce?
Aren't you planning to be a stay-at-home dad? You can take care of the child all by yourself.
I ignored her and quickly glanced at the divorce agreement. Sophia was too greedy. Even after climbing up the social ladder, she still wanted to split our assets.
Sophia, are you divorcing me because I don't go to work? I can go back to work. Please, let's not divorce.
John, can you stop being so clingy? I don't love you anymore. I can't live with you. Do you understand?
Her urgency was understandable. After all, The wealthy man was much richer than my family. She couldn't wait to divorce me and marry into wealth.
You should sign the papers soon. While you're still young, you might have a chance to remarry. If you drag this out, you'll be older and still have a child. Who would want to marry you then?
I pretended to wipe away non-existent tears, inwardly sneering. After a moment, I acted as if I had made a decision.
I'll sign, but I can't accept this agreement. Sophia, you're the one asking for a divorce. You should leave with nothing, and I should have custody of our son.
Why? Why should my daughter leave with nothing? She's been with you for so many years and even gave you a child. Do you think my daughter is just a baby-making machine?
Margaret was shameless. It was her daughter who had pursued me relentlessly, clinging to me every day. After marriage, she repeatedly cheated, and now she wanted compensation for childbirth. Would she also demand compensation from her lover after breaking up? Moreover, Sophia clearly didn't care about her son, and Margaret naturally didn't care about her grandson. They even considered selling their own grandson on the black market. What did custody matter to them? Arguing with them was pointless. I continued to feign sadness.
I don't want a divorce. If you don't agree to leave with nothing, then let's not divorce.
Sophia hesitated for a moment, then went out to make a phone call. When she returned, she arrogantly said,
"Fine, I agree to leave with nothing. What's the big deal? John, do you think I care about your family stuff?"
I was secretly delighted. The first step was successful. I quickly found a lawyer and drafted a solid divorce agreement. Sophia couldn't wait to sign her name and then moved out of my house with Margaret.
I want to take this and that.
Leave it, Margaret. Let's go.
Margaret kept muttering about wanting to take things until Sophia whispered a few words in her ear, making her smile and leave empty-handed with Sophia. As soon as they left, I immediately called a moving company to clear out all their belongings from the house and then listed the house for sale at a low price.
I don't care how much I lose on the house, I just don't want to keep it because they had lived there, and it felt unlucky.
But now there's a cooling-off period for the divorce, and the certificate won't be available for another 30 days. I guess Sophia must be very impatient. During this time, a private investigator thoroughly investigated James and sent all the materials to my email. I carefully reviewed them and found many interesting things.
It turned out that James was also an illegitimate child. His father passed away when he was in middle school, and his legal wife was very shrewd, not allowing his mother and him to get a penny of the inheritance.
Since entering university, James had been adept at cozying up to wealthy women, mingling with many married families. No wonder during university, he occasionally seemed to have plenty of money, but at that time, I wasn't curious about his private life, so I never inquired.
After getting involved with Sophia, James cut ties with many wealthy women, except for one person who always kept in touch with him.
I looked at the woman's photo and was shocked.
This woman looked so much like Sophia's illegitimate child. No, it should be said that the illegitimate child resembled her.
As I continued reading the information, I couldn't help but marvel at the private investigator's skills in uncovering this.
It turned out that Sophia and this woman gave birth on the same day, but Sophia's baby was stillborn. James secretly swapped the woman's baby with the stillborn. What a clever trick. The big fat grandson Margaret cherished so much had no blood relation to her.
Sophia wanted me to raise her illegitimate child, but she ended up helping her lover raise his illegitimate child for 6 years. I had someone reveal Sophia's affair with the wealthy heir to James. After Sophia and Margaret moved out of my house, they temporarily stayed in a shabby apartment because the wealthy heir promised Sophia that he would marry her as soon as the divorce was finalized. Therefore, Sophia was willing to wait in this rundown apartment for the divorce certificate. I arranged for someone to disclose the apartment's address to James. When James arrived in a rage, Sophia was entangled with the wealthy heir in bed. James instantly broke down and started fighting with the two of them. The wealthy CEO had fled amidst the chaos, leaving Sophia and James to fight from the street to the alley, attracting a crowd of onlookers.
You heartless man. I gave up the chance to be with a rich woman for you, endured humiliation for years, and this is how you repay me? Slaps James several times. I even had a child for you, and instead of being grateful, you dare to hit me?
You gold-digging woman, I'll teach you a lesson.
The two fought fiercely, surrounded by a growing crowd. Meanwhile, I sat leisurely in a cafe across the street, watching the drama unfold with great satisfaction. But soon, a private detective sent me photos showing that Sophia and James had reconciled. It wasn't hard to imagine how Sophia had persuaded James, likely promising him more money once she joined the wealthy family. James was very materialistic, otherwise, he wouldn't have stayed with Sophia for so long. As for Sophia, she didn't want to completely break ties with James, especially since she had a so-called son with him. However, the real drama was just beginning. A month passed quickly, and I successfully obtained my divorce certificate. As I left the Civil Affairs Bureau, Sophia smugly said to me,
John, your family might have some money, but from now on, I'll be wealthier and have a higher social status. If you ever face difficulties, just kneel and beg me, and I might help you out of our past relationship.
Sophia, let's hope you don't end up begging me first.
With that, I drove away, leaving Sophia behind, who spat twice, clearly not taking my warning seriously. She was still dreaming of marrying into a wealthy family. Little did she know, after driving a short distance, I turned a corner and parked by the roadside. I then dialed a number.
You can withdraw now. Don't worry, you'll get every penny of the promised reward.
Soon, Sophia found that she could no longer contact the wealthy CEO. No matter how many times she called or messaged, there was no response. She had no choice but to go to the address the CEO had given her, which he had claimed was his home. Sophia made a scene in front of the luxurious villa, disturbing its owner. The villa belonged to a famously wealthy and notoriously temperamental woman. She immediately ordered her bodyguards to teach Sophia a lesson, even knocking out 2 of her teeth. The private detective I hired quickly sent me the video of Sophia being beaten. I sipped expensive red wine, watching the slow-motion replay with great satisfaction. Then, I picked up my son, unable to resist kissing his little cheeks.
My dear son, if it weren't for you, we might have been in real trouble because of them.
Tommy seemed to have no idea what I was saying, just waving his little hands and babbling. To this day, I still haven't figured out how I could hear Tommy's thoughts. Perhaps it was fate, and even the heavens couldn't stand by and watch. Sophia was still unwilling to give up. After all, she had resolutely divorced John, her middle-class husband, for that wealthy CEO. If she couldn't marry into a wealthy family with great fanfare, would she have to live on her meager monthly salary of $3,000?
Not to mention, I had already sent videos of her infidelity, fights, and causing disturbances outside someone's villa to her company's email.
Naturally, the company couldn't keep such an employee, so they promptly fired her. And this wealthy CEO was undoubtedly her last lifeline. She went to the entrance of the wealthy CEO's family business again, claiming to be the CEO's wife and demanding to see her fiancé. However, no one in the company had ever heard of the CEO she mentioned.
Who told you our CEO has a fiancé? Our chairman only has 2 daughters. How could there be a fiancé? Are you from some mental hospital? Get lost.
Sophia was completely dumbfounded.
This can't be right. I've been here before. Don't you remember? I even walked around the company with him, and many people smiled at us.
Of course, because this company belonged to John's good friend's aunt, and those people were just temporary actors hired to play along with the wealthy CEO act. Sophia shamelessly refused to leave and caused a scene at the company's entrance, only to be dealt with by the security guards again. At this moment, she finally realized she had been played. The so-called wealthy CEO was just a gigolo John hired. As for the CEO's parents and the company, they were all part of John's plan to get back at her. Not only did he make sure Sophia left the marriage with nothing, but he also made her experience the despair of losing everything. For a gold digger like her, what could be more devastating than seeing her dream of a wealthy life shatter in an instant?
John, I was foolish before. Please forgive me.
John, you and Sophia have been together for so many years, and there's Tommy. Can you really bear to let Tommy lose his mother?
John, can you come out and see me? I miss you and Tommy so much.
Holding Tommy, John stood by the window, watching the mother and daughter put on a heartfelt performance. They might have guessed that this was his doing, but so what? They were already at their wits' end and had no choice but to beg for his forgiveness. John let them wait the entire day until the sun set before having someone hand them a paternity test. It was the paternity test result of Sophia and her son. Sophia had brought her illegitimate child to stay at John's house for a few days, making it easy to obtain their hair samples. The report clearly showed that they were not biologically related. Additionally, I provided her with a bonus revelation: the entire process of how her son was switched at birth.
Sweetie, what does it say?
Margaret couldn't understand and asked Sophia. Sophia's hands trembled, her gaze seemed to burn through the report. Moments later, she cried out in anger.
James, I will end him.
As soon as she finished speaking, she stumbled to her feet, ready to confront James. Margaret, startled, quickly grabbed her.
Sweetie, what's going on? What did James do?
James. That scoundrel, he switched my child.
Sweetie, calm down. No matter what happened, for the sake of our grandson, you need to stay composed.
Composed? That is not my son. Nor is he your grandson, do you understand?
What?
Margaret stared at her in shock, her face turning pale. The next moment, she fainted. Sophia ignored her and rushed to confront James. I had someone move Margaret away from my house. I didn't want her collapsing at my doorstep, it was too ominous. Sophia found James and confronted him about switching her child. James held the paternity test report, unable to defend himself despite having much to say. With Sophia's financial support dwindling, James had long been dissatisfied with her. Their argument escalated into a physical altercation, and in a fit of rage, Sophia harmed James fatally. Terrified, she fled the scene, but the police quickly apprehended her. Sophia was sentenced to life imprisonment. Later, I heard that she couldn't bear the bullying in prison and chose to end her own life. James's child was placed in an orphanage, and as for Margaret, I once saw her scavenging by the roadside during a trip with friends. She looked dazed, clearly having lost her sanity. I only glanced at her briefly and walked away. I couldn't muster any sympathy for someone who tried to sell my son and harm me. Justice had been served, and this was her deserved fate.